We're going to talk about the cycle knowledge gap, obviously, because we've just done a huge report on it. We've obviously identified, and my own personal experience was, I was aged 40 when I realised that my disrupted sleep and mad anxiety was my pre-period symptoms. And to have lived with that for probably like a solid 20 years was kind of like quite infuriating. So there was all these things, and like every time I speak to anybody, we're always like, oh God, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then we come on and we're like, wow. And it's like, how many times are we going to say that? Like in a space of 30 years. So I think we all know that there's this huge lack of education and how I think our menstrual cycles affect our personal wellness. And I really do hope in the report that you can start to see the correlations that are far more reaching than maybe the traditional kind of cramping or PMS symptoms, etc., that we tend to associate with our cycle. But I guess I'm kind of interested. I'll start with Rhiannon, and then I think I'll ask Becky as well.
This is going personal stories.
We can go personal, but why do you think this lack of education exists? And how can this be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, there's a massive stigma out there, for starters, so that stops kind of people having conversations with their kind of daughters right from the start. I know my mum tells me this story and has told me the story since I was little about how when my grandmother came on her period, she literally thought she was dying. She had no idea, no one had ever spoken to her. So from my mum's perspective, she was quite keen that we didn't have the same experience. So it's so reliant on what you're being taught at home, because there isn't that education in schools, which we know is improving. Some amazing people, Luna app, trying to improve kind of the education aspects of things, but at the end of the day, it's no one taking responsibility, and now we're seeing brands stepping up and kind of filling that gap, and social media doing an amazing job. So yeah, it's a positive future, but a dark past. On the spot.
I think in terms of education, there is some. I've got a teenage daughter, and it is there to some extent, but what I particularly notice is that I don't know where it is with boys as well, and I think that's really important because it's normalising the experience. I just wanted to share one experience that I had in the workplace actually, and I've got huge respect for this person. So I worked with a director who chose to use the menopause 5 times every day into any normal conversation, and that for me was a really powerful thing to do, to normalise our experiences, to educate people, and he did his little bit to change culture, and I had a huge respect for that. So and I think that's one thing practically we can all do to try and make things better in terms of education.
Katie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I also think we're going to be the generation that does it, because if I'm totally honest, I didn't know a lot myself. I mean, we've like these guys, we've done lots of research, and we found that 87% of women were not taught about intimate care at school. It's great, it has now been added to the curriculum in September 2020, but it's at quite a top line level. And so 80% of women weren't taught about it at school. 80% of women couldn't accurately locate the vulva, and most of us, I mean myself included, until about 3 years ago, I just called it my vagina. And really embarrassingly, the first ever bit of research we did for Luna Daily, I said in our survey, how often do you wash your vagina? And quite a few women came back and said, well, never. And I was like, well, that's a bit weird. I just thought, all sort of thought we all did, give a bit of a wash. And then I was like, ugh, because you shouldn't be washing your vagina because it's totally self-cleaning. It's really clever. Never needs any product, never put any washing products inside your vagina or water, anything. But, the vulval external skin is actually quite similar to skin under our arms. So if you want to give it a wash, great. But, even I, as somebody that was entering into a category that I thought I was pretty well educated on, I made a mistake. And I was in an interview last night where she asked me, so why is it that the vulva just went missing? We were just never taught it. And I don't know why, and none of us were taught about it. But I really think we're the generation that's going to change it, because if I speak to my mum, she wasn't taught about it. And so actually we didn't have women outside of the education system campaigning for change, and we didn't have women outside of social media campaigning for change. But because we as women are understanding a lot more, I think we've got so much better a chance to get it added to education policies and to get it added.
Our GPs as well. I've been playing a fun game over the last year of what can I throw at my GP? And someone was telling me all the things you can get on prescription. You can get lube on prescription. I had no idea. So I was like, hey, Mr. GP, can I have some lube? And he was like, let me check my book. And he was like, turns out I can. So yeah, being able to advocate for ourselves is a really powerful way of then changing the healthcare system as well.
And in your report, you referenced Maria Caulfield, who's the new women's health ambassador, because they're doing a new report this spring, which I think is a really good point, Rhiannon, because we've got a vulval dermatologist as part of our kind of Luna Collective, and she was saying that, for example, vulval dermatology is not taught specifically if you enter into dermatology. So she sort of became an expert because she ended up being the person people would go to, and she ended up seeing lots of women with vulval skin conditions. But similarly, menopause is not currently taught on the GP curriculum. Because it's such a short curriculum, they've said they haven't got time to teach it, which is bonkers because half the population are pretty much guaranteed to go through menopause, and lots of those women will need to see a GP about HRT, about, have they got enough testosterone levels, loads of things talked about in the report, yet GPs aren't equipped with it. Like, it's bonkers.
They don't understand enough about it.
There's a role that retail plays in this as well, though. Like, if you walk into a shop, you'd be forgiven for thinking none of these things are issues because there isn't anything there to deal with them. So, like, you're guided by the products and services that are available to what to the issues that. So you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, actually, maybe it's just me because no one else is experiencing. Because if they were, there would be something there
exactly. It would be
to deal with
there,
this,
you'd
right?
be able to hear about it on social. And I think, and I think that's the whole point. Is like where do we think that responsibility lies? Like,
it's interesting because it's different in the US to the UK as well. So we're seeing the US is slightly further ahead. They're a little bit more there with hormone concierges and kind of places that you can go for impartial advice, or, and that's how I learned about how to request lube from a GP, was because actually I saw hormone concierge. So I think if we look to the US, they're a bit further ahead, and hopefully we'll start seeing that here, or someone in this room can invent something here, maybe.
Rebecca, you're totally right, though, that, if I was to walk in I won't name names, but a traditional drugstore in the UK, typically you've sort of got menstruation products which typically women need once a month, next to sort of lube, menopause, incontinence, fertility maybe, and sort of all just shoved together in a corner. No one really, menopause on the end now. But what we are seeing is some of the online players really making a change, and that's partly because the shopping experience is different. We don't have physical shelves we have to stand in front of. So a great example is Sephora, I think, are really leading the way, because rather than having a feminine hygiene category, they've recently launched, really quite extensive intimate care and sexual wellness category, and what they've decided to do is just place them right next to face moisturisers. So as you're scrolling through your feed on Sephora, you can see a face moisturiser next to a vibrator, next to a product that might help, reduce menstruation cramps. And that, for me, is like a retailer that's really putting a foot in the forward in terms of changing.
Because you're totally right, because it's all part of this holistic wellness, right? It's like kind of like, being able to have a serum for my face is no different to wanting a serum for my vulva, which you've all got in your goodie bags, by the way. And I think, like, why aren't we thinking about all of these things in completeness? And I think one of the things that we touch upon a lot, Rebecca, is kind of it starts at school age. Like, it is great, like we were saying, that in 2020 it's gone in the curriculum, but it's so light touch. Before that you might have been told there was a tampon and that you get a period once a month and that was it. But also, and we'll go on to this next, it is about the role of kind of social media and communities and places you can have these safe, open conversations. And then also retailers, right? Because it's exactly that. If you walk into a store, and you're probably sold loads of products. They probably really want you to buy skincare. They've got loads of products for your hair. They've probably got loads of weight loss things and teeth whitening and all these other products. But are they serving that other wellness need? You tend to think, oh, obviously it's no problem then. So maybe I'm on my own thinking that this is an issue. And that kind of drives the kind of taboo nature of it, which is one of the things that the Women's Health Strategy is really key on, is they want to stop this kind of taboo nature around conversations around women's health. Which I think sort of leads us on a little bit to kind of cyber censorship. Obviously, it was a very important topic to us yesterday, and very fortunate that a lot of people in this room and sort of two of the panellists have kind of joined us in signing the letter. Rebecca, I'll start with you on this one actually, because obviously it's super close to our hearts, and then lead on to the guys in terms of why do we think this is such a problem, and why is it so important that this is challenged to kind of make positive change?
Look, I think we live in a world that we all know now where digital platforms, social media plays the biggest role in information dissemination. So to have the largest ones of those available in Facebook and Instagram, and there are others, I mean, we're talking specifically about Meta, to have those barred from disseminating information on most women's health topics is ridiculous. And it's archaic, and it doesn't make any sense. It's discriminatory, and it does so many different things to place women at a disadvantage and to take us backwards in terms of all of the work that we're trying to do. So from a societal perspective, this is a big issue. I mean, it's a big issue for us commercially and as a brand, but from a societal point of view, it's a massive issue. And I think for someone like Meta to come out and make this change, And we understand this to be an issue around machine learning, around algorithms rather than intentional policy, and we'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. But for someone to come out like Meta, to come out and make a change on this would be a real statement about the importance of women, of women's health issues, which is what we really need now to galvanise this industry. Why this campaign is so important to us, because it's not just about us being able to advertise for Fewe, which, by the way, is challenging, right? You cannot. One of the reasons vulva is not the most censored word on Meta is because no one knows what a vulva is. If they did, then it probably would be the most censored word on there. Vagina is the most censored, one of the most censored words on there. Yeah. But one of the reasons it's so important, yes, we want to be able to promote our products and our brands, but we also need to be able to use these information and education platforms to teach women of all ages, including our ages, about these serious issues that can help to prevent illness, can help to improve wellness, that can help to improve society. These are really important key issues. So this, if this report for us is about building the brand and it's about building commercial momentum, but it's also about making this change, and we're really committed to trying to pursue this over the coming months.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more experiences?
Yeah, I think, being a future forecaster, trend forecaster, we're really focused on where, what this looks like as a trajectory and where we're going next. And Meta have a huge stake, not only in the metaverse, but also in healthcare. They're really serious about going down the healthcare route. So if they can't get their policies right on a social media platform, how are they going to get that right when they're tackling healthcare? So let's tackle this now at the point that it's at, and it's hugely important even now, but also going forward, what's their healthcare metaverse going to look like if they can't say the word vagina? It's not very promising.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really agree with everything that the guys at Fewe are trying to do with this revolution is to normalise the conversation around the vagina and the vulva, and that doesn't mean that everybody has to be really comfortable or even want their social feeds to be filled full of vaginas or vulvas.
Don't follow us if you don't want to see it.
But actually also so many of the messages that you put out are not just about that. And so for us, normalising the conversation doesn't mean that everyone has to be ready to shout and talk about their vulva. And actually not singling it out. So all of our products actually are for your vulva and everywhere else, so intimate skin and everywhere else. So just trying to normalise it as one of our other body parts. But the reason it's so important to normalise it, the reason we can all just say it without even thinking about it now is because it is so normal to us. And the health benefits you just talked about are so important. So our partner charity, the Lady Garden Foundation, they're one of the leading gynecological charities. And the reason we partner with them is that 1 in 3 women are not going to their cervical smears because they're saying they're too embarrassed. And 2 in 3 women will not say the word vagina to a doctor. And, it gives me goosebumps. It's devastating that one of the only preventable cancers we have is through a cervical smear here in the UK, and people aren't going because they're embarrassed. And so, the more we can normalise the conversation in school, in social media, the more actually, when it is really serious and you do need women to go, actually will have an impact. So if anybody is a woman or knows a woman that might be due their smear or is not sure, give your GP a ring and get it done, because it's devastating that cervical smears are at an all-time low, literally today, a 20-year low than they've ever been, despite us having more information than ever.
It's life-threatening stuff, right? It's literally life and death stuff, and it is hugely important, and it needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely.